Do we have a quarterback controversy at Ole Miss yet? We're going to be talking about it on this crossover, Locked on the Portal and Locked on Ole Miss.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into this crossover edition of the Portal and Locked on Ole Miss. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making both Locked on Ole Miss and Locked on the Portal a part of your day each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, putting off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward by Mazda. Move and be moved. All right, we're going to be talking all things Ole Miss, a little recruiting. They've had a few commitments over the last month. We're going to be talking a little bit about Ole Miss's defense. It's underrated, actually way underrated, especially the secondary and the quarterback controversy. That's what we got to talk about most. The big game with LSU this weekend. Which quarterback is it and why? To help me figure out all of that and more, my guy, Stephen Willis from Locked on Ole Miss. Stephen, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing quite well. It's LSU week. It's the game that I most want to win every single season. Mississippi State game is I don't want to lose, but the game I most want to win is the LSU game. So it should be pretty fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans for LSU are trying to figure out the same thing that I have been. And that's why I wanted to do the show with you. Trinidad Chambliss, the quarterback, played the last couple games. Austin Simmons been a little banged up. He's got a quote-unquote bum wheel, as you told me before the show. And Ole Miss is going against the defense you could argue is the best overall in the country so far over the first month. It's definitely in a very select few, if it's not number one. And Trinidad is a kid. It's a great story. Comes from Ferris State, a school in the state of Michigan. It's FCS, I guess.
No, it's Division II.
Division II. Oh, wow. And he tore it up there, but you just don't know how guys are going to make a transition to D1, let alone the Southeastern Conference. And he's killed it. Here are a couple of numbers for him that are just kind of interesting in general. Like I've got, well, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen on this. Just make it very simple for everybody. The number one stat for this young man is the deep ball. When he throws it over 20 yards, Stephen, it's not good. It's insanity. He's thrown 10 passes over 20 yards from the line of scrimmage, 8 of incomplete, 333 yards and a score. So he's averaging 33.3 yards passing on plays down the field. If you're accurate on the deep ball, buddy, we need to sign you up. And again, like I said a minute ago, you just didn't know what was going to happen. So what has been your take on him as a passer, first and foremost?
It surprised me, honestly, because whenever I was talking about this in the summer, whenever we were trying to figure out, it's like, how would he transition from Ferris State and Division II football all the way up to the SEC and all of that? How would the passing translate? Against Arkansas, that was not a problem at all. He attacked down the field. He attacked with Deuce Alexander. He obviously is a very good player. And against Tulane, there was a little bit more of the same, where you saw him kind of show himself. Now, there's a couple of passes that were a little bit weird. The defender got their hand on it. Maybe LSU is able to pull that in. Maybe they are a half a step closer to the football and are able to get that. But I don't know that. What you see is a guy that just lets it rip throwing the ball. It doesn't matter if it's a 30-yard route, a 20-yard route. He is going to completely just let it go. And Lane Kiffin, as I was told by my friends at Locked On Sooners, he is just the perfect person to find a quarterback that always will just let it rip. And this is just another example of letting it happen. And listen, what makes Trinidad so special? And everybody loves the name. They love the story. They love the fact that he was a D2 quarterback. He is basically this season at this point, Cody Schrader, the running back from Missouri a couple years ago, to where it's going to be a major talking point. But at its core, Trinidad Chambliss is an athletic game manager. Now, he can do some twitchy things running the football, and he has that element of his game. But passing the ball and hitting multiple wide receivers, I think 7 and 9 wide receivers over the last 2 games got involved. I like Austin Simmons as a player, but him, just like Jackson Dart, there was a tendency for those quarterbacks to lock in on somebody. With Austin, it was Harrison Wallace III. With Jackson Dart, it was Trey Harris. I think that spreading the ball around to these elite playmakers that Lane Kiffin has been able to assemble at the wide receiver and running back position, it makes it incredibly hard to stop this offense. And I'm curious to see what it looks like, because LSU, like you said, potentially the best defense in the country. Is this a bridge too far, as Matt Moscona from Locked On LSU told me in our crossover about that? Is this going to be too much for a D2 transfer? I've seen text threads that's like, oh, he's a D2 transfer. If LSU loses to him, they don't deserve to make the playoffs. It's like, no, it's not that simple. They see D2. They don't see what he's doing. And because of that, I think that might be the reason teams are getting beat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if you take somebody lightly before you go up against them, that's on you. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely on you. And just to put it in perspective, I mean, I can pull the stats back up here, Stephen. Like, he's not just a good quarterback, he's a balanced quarterback. Like, if I shift the numbers here from Pro Football Focus instead of going with the passing depth, here are a couple of the other stats that I find really interesting for Trinidad. Number one, quarterback accuracy never goes out of style, obviously. 67%. Well, that's a good start. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He doesn't turn the ball over. He has 5 big-time throws, and he's only attempted 69 passes. So everything is just looking the way it's supposed to, and I get it that the last 2 games were against Arkansas and Tulane. They're not elite teams by any means, but he still tore them apart. That's the bottom line. So I'm sure teams will adjust to a certain degree, but I know Lane Kiffin will adjust as well. Tell me if you think the following is a true statement. If you think about Trinidad, Lane Kiffin is probably going to use him as a runner a little more against LSU, or at least put him in a position to be. RPOs, get him on the perimeter. That's pretty low-hanging fruit. But he's going to come up with something else. I don't know what it is. Do you think that he's going to save back a little something for the Tigers?
I think Lane enjoys this personally.
I do too.
Just my opinion. He gets a chance to be a scheme football coach for a while, and you have a toy in Trinidad Chambliss to where you can do stuff that's outside of the norm of what you've been doing for 4 or 5 years. I think he enjoys that. And when you're playing against Blake Baker and this defense that could be the best in all of college football, you have a situation with what you can do against that team to where you have a chance to scheme some stuff up. In 2023, that abomination of a defensive game where Jackson Dart just went up and down the field against the LSU Tigers, that game, Ole Miss picked on Harold Perkins. You didn't expect them going in to pick on Harold Perkins, but they did. That is because when Lane respects you, like really respects you, and he can kind of dig into scheming, he is going to find out exactly how to match up his best player against your weakest defender. You might not know he's your weakest defender, but Lane has picked it out on film, and there's going to be a Daquan Wright against Whit Weeks, or Harold Perkins lining up and Winston Watkins. You don't know the matchup, but it's there. It's on tape. Because as good as LSU is, they remind me so much of the 2024 Ole Miss team, and that was a flawed football team. They spent a lot of money. They went all in, but they have trouble running the football. They have an experienced quarterback. They have really good wide receivers that just doesn't seem to kind of connect, and a really good defense. So we'll see exactly how it goes. Now, they beat Florida and they beat Clemson, who at the time you're like, wow, they beat DJ Lagway and Cade Klubnik. And now it's like, they beat DJ Lagway and Cade Klubnik. So, we'll see what happens and what the team looks like. I think LSU is going to blow up and blow out somebody this season. You just don't want to be that team when they wake up. It's going to be like an Arkansas, Ole Miss type situation from 2024.
Yeah, it could be.
But if you can keep them down, I think you'll be in good shape. And Trinidad Chambliss honestly provides a different look, because if you think about the Texas A&M and the Alabama game a year ago for LSU. That was Blake Baker's defense. They ran the quarterback up and down the field on that defense. And I don't care necessarily about good players because they went to the transfer portal and all of that. I get all of that. What I'm talking about is something intrinsic with the defensive coordinator and what he's trying to do, trying to stop the quarterback run or ignoring the quarterback run, and maybe you're able to exploit that. I think that is something we need to watch for in this football game. I
agree. We also need to talk a little bit about the Ole Miss defense, which we will do next here on this crossover with Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On the Portal. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP, who delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Well, let's just talk about the guy we've been talking about throughout the show, and that's Trinidad Chambliss. He delivered for the Rebels in a 45-10 win over Tulane, and he ran for over 100 yards. He threw for over 300 yards. He was the truth. So for Trinidad Chambliss and Ole Miss Rebels, they got it done, and DoorDash delivers your Saturday. So it's just like he did with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday when you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Terms apply. Promo code through November 18th. We are also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is also here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if it wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. If you want to bet halftime scores, player props, parlays, or just the traditional money line, whatever it may be, FanDuel has you covered. So you're ready to play? Download the FanDuel app and use FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Thank you once again for making Locked On the Portal and Locked On Ole Miss a part of your day each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I am joined by Stephen Willis, host of Locked On Ole Miss, and I'm Brian Smith, host of the Portal Podcast. And I want to give a little credit to something because you and I were both worried from spring through summer, even in fall camp. Every time I asked you on air, through a text, on the phone, didn't matter. Secondary was our concern about Ole Miss. But I'm just going to read the stats. And, Stephen, you can take this any direction you want after I read it. But so far, they're 25th with 166.3 yards per passing D per game. You would have taken that in a heartbeat, and I don't even have to ask you. But here's the stat that I find crazy. They adjust during the game. In the second quarter, teams are 11 for 30 in passing. Like, it's crazy. Like, did you have any semblance of this with the nuggets you were getting out of fall camp, or is this just out of the blue?
I think the nuggets coming out, you started to hear worry about the secondary in the beginning. By the end, you didn't hear about them at all. And when it comes to fall camp, not hearing about a unit, that's almost as good as hearing good things. So they're not paying attention to them. They're not newsworthy. So this secondary, and this is the thing that you need to remember. They also had like a 320-yard game against Arkansas, and they're still only giving up 166 yards. There's been multiple games this season where they've given up nearly like around 100 yards in the game. Like they completely shut down Georgia State, as you should. They completely shut down Tulane, as you should. And as the pass rush gets a little bit more effective, this Ole Miss team is going to be pretty good defensively. The pass rush, they're not getting home at the moment. So the turnovers and the explosives are not happening. You have a young front seven, a talented front seven, but a young front seven, and they're getting better and better and better and better. Against Tulane, this was the highlight of that game. You talked about the secondary. Listen, Tulane ran for 150, 160 yards in that game, but whenever Tulane needed 1 yard, or 2 yards, and they went for it on fourth down, there was no chance that they were going to pick it up. They were getting physically whipped by Ole Miss's front seven, and that is a flashpoint. That is something you can take to the next game. That is the way that this defense is going to get even better, and the secondary is going to get better because of the work that the front seven is going to be able to do. And this weekend, it's important for the Ole Miss front seven to show up against LSU. listen, we can joke about the movable object and the resistible force against LSU's run game and Ole Miss's run defense right now. But the key to this game will be LSU's run game versus Ole Miss's run defense. Whichever team can impose their will on the game is going to win the football game. That is absolutely the key of this ball game. You won't, believe it or not, and it's very counterintuitive, you want Garrett Nussmeier to have to beat you with his arm as a one-dimensional quarterback. And if that happens, you can turn the dogs of war loose, and it's going to look a lot like the Florida game from a year ago down in the swamp if that happens. So I am curious of what can happen. Maybe this is the game finally that Santarin Perkins is rushing the quarterback instead of dropping back into coverage. Maybe that is the answer. Maybe this is the Cam Franklin game. Maybe Xavion Harris and William Eccles, they stand up in the middle of that defense. Maybe Andrew Jones gets a little bit more of a run out. This is an important game because if Ole Miss wins this game, they're likely going to the playoffs. If you look at Ole Miss's schedule, at that point, you can probably say, hey, this is a playoff team. If they lose this game, they're likely not going to the playoffs with Georgia and Oklahoma coming up next. So this is a huge game for Ole Miss this Saturday.
Let me ask you, you brought up the pass rush. Perkins, we both know, is a great player. I think he's the most gifted player on the roster. That being the case, if you take Harold Perkins, or not Perkins, Santarin Perkins, out of the equation, which is the next guy that you think needs to be a one-on-one pass rush demon to win his matchups against LSU?
I think Prince Will Emonmielen, honestly, and he's gotten close. He's been right there on the cusp. It seems like every game he has a couple of hurries getting after the quarterback, but he's just not getting home. And part of that has to do with Arkansas has one of the better offensive lines in the country. Kentucky has a decent offensive line this year. Now, against Tulane, I don't know exactly what that looked like, but that could be about the way it was schemed up and the fact that they didn't throw the ball very often. And the same thing goes with Georgia State. This LSU game is going to be a little bit of a different animal because if you remember in last year's Ole Miss LSU game, it was like 4th and 25 or something like that. And Santarin Perkins was about that far from getting a sack that would have ended that game. LSU completed the pass, got the 25-yard first down on 4th down, ended up winning the ball game. So if they can turn stuff about that and get home, finally start getting to the quarterback, this defense can take it to another level, especially with how good they're playing in the secondary right now.
Who's the best player in Ole Miss's secondary, and how do you think the transfer players they brought in this year have helped the secondary?
I think Antonio Kite's the best player in the secondary. It's crazy, right? If you get recruited by Nick Saban to play cornerback, you're probably pretty good at it. He transferred over to Ole Miss, and he's just shown out. He's an elite athlete. There was a competition in fall camp with one of the other cornerbacks in the room, and whoever got the starting position was going to get number 8, and it was an Antonio Kite that was able to pull that out. He should have had an interception against Arkansas. Actually did catch the ball, but it was called back from an off-ball holding call in the defensive secondary. If that happens, if that interception happens, that game could look completely different as well. I think Antonio Kite has a chance to be really special for Ole Miss moving forward.
I think they've got a pretty good secondary based on the numbers. Again, in case you missed it, 166.3 yards per game. They're 25th in the nation in pass defense. My question, and I don't know how this is going to work out. For those that don't know, LSU lost not one, but both of their offensive tackles from last year, a year early to the draft. That is a death knell. On top of it, before last season, the guy that they had slated to play guard wanted to play tackle, and he was an elite recruit. Well, he's now the left tackle at Tennessee. So you essentially lost 3 NFL tackles in the course of about 8 months. I mean, it's crazy. They've got good players there, but I think it's Weston Davis is the left tackle or the right tackle, one of them. He's not ready yet, etc. And they don't run the ball that well. If I'm LSU, my biggest concern is LSU's pass protection not being quite what it needs to be. And if that doesn't end up working out well, they just haven't run the ball that good. And it's not due to running back talent. Caden Durham's a guy, and got Harlan Berry and some other players coming up the ladder. They don't lack talent there. Their O-line, to me, is the key. And you brought up who's going to be the one that imposes its will. I don't feel real good about LSU's offensive line because their skill talent on both sides of the ball is gross. I mean, it's gross. Typical LSU.
Yeah.
So unless that offensive line grows up in a hurry, I kind of favor the Rebels in this one. But that's why you play the games, Stephen. That's why you play the games. And speaking of, when we come back, we're going to talk about recruits. LSU is probably the kind of team that you want to bring in a lot of guys. We're going to talk about that next here on this crossover, Locked On Ole Miss and the Portal. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda, who crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. You can also make everyday drives feel anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Stephen, I don't really want to dive into the list yet. I typically like to wait till Friday to even look at them for the most part. But I'm sure it's a big visitor list. Is there any 2 or 3 guys that you want to talk about? Any commitments recently for Ole Miss or anything else that you feel comfortable kind of discussing? Like, okay, they've gotten this guy, and both LSU and Ole Miss are recruiting the same kids, the 2 states. LSU's recruiting Mississippi hard, and Ole Miss is recruiting Louisiana hard, etc. Anybody that kind of crosses both fences or anything in particular with this game?
Emmanuel Tucker, the offensive tackle out of New Albany, flipped from LSU to Ole Miss. And, Brian, we talked about it during the offseason. I thought that he was going to end up at Ole Miss. It's hard whenever it's 30 miles up the road from where you're from. But he looks good. There was a game, I guess it was New Albany versus Pontotoc or something like that. It doesn't matter who they were playing. But they just kept scoring and scoring and scoring. And everybody's like, he's playing a lot of defensive line. He's playing a lot of defensive tackle. And I was like, no, listen, I spoke with Art Kehoe whenever he was the offensive line coach at Ole Miss. And Art Kehoe said the best offensive linemen were standout defensive linemen in high school because of the athleticism required. And if he's playing on the D-line, it's an absolute good thing. But Emmanuel Tucker, he is going to be potentially a tackle of the future for the Ole Miss Rebels as long as he develops.
He's a big kid, and I liked his junior film. I haven't watched him yet his senior season, but he's mobile enough that he could play D tackle at Ole Miss and be a guy. But I think he can be an NFL player as an offensive lineman. Well, I don't know if it'll end up being guard or tackle, but that'll take care of itself. Yeah, I would definitely look at that. What about the other kids in state? Is there anybody that got coming or anybody you're hoping they get on campus? Because what time's the game kicking off for this?
2:30. It's 2:30. It's a big weekend, and you're starting to see some names pop up from inside the state. Like all of their commitments, like the running back out of Kemper County is going to be there. Juck Goldsberry. If you're committed to Ole Miss, you are going to this game. So we'll see exactly how it goes. I'm curious about Jace Matthews. Will Ole Miss kind of get him on campus, especially now that they have Dante Moncrief as kind of the recruiting coordinator, recruiting czar in there. He's Jace's cousin. So we'll see exactly what that looks like as signing day gets a little closer. Can Ole Miss get him on campus? Now that you're playing the NIL game and stuff like that, it's not as cut and dry as the way it used to be, but I don't think that can hurt, honestly. So we'll see exactly how that looks.
Well, I'm curious how that goes too, because Jace Matthews, for those that have not seen him, I believe it's Greene County. I can't remember, Greene County or something like that.
Greene County, yeah.
But he is one of the freakiest athletes in the class. He's arguably the best receiver in the country. He's up there. He's in that conversation, conservatively top 5. And he could play DB, running back, wide receiver. It really doesn't matter. He will figure it out. But that's a guy that I think he can change your program no matter where he goes, because he's a home run hitter and everybody's got to account for him on each play. He will be an impact recruit, whether it's Auburn or Ole Miss or somewhere else. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a great guy. So, Stephen, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
All right, you can check me out at Locked On Ole Miss's YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your podcast. We're there as well. You can see my Twitter handle down below. You can follow me at the Stephen Willis as well. We like to have a good time talking Ole Miss football and making things kind of nice for you. I'm pretty excited about this weekend. Very, very, very cautiously optimistic, but I am optimistic this weekend. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I agree. This ought to be a good game. That'll be a good weekend college football in general.
Oh, yeah.
To be honest with you, there's a lot of quality games going on. So I am available on the Portal Podcast, wherever you get them, just like with Steven, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Odyssey, you name it. We will see you again soon.